It was morning time at the Carousel Boutique, a beautiful store with polished marble floors and lilac curtains embroidered with silver filigree. Rarity moved gracefully through her boutique as she arranged her new summer line display. Each mannequin showed off her couture beautifully, swathed in teal satins, rose chiffons, and diamond-studded collars. Rarity's horn glowed with a blue aura as she levitated up a bejeweled scarf to drape it over the mannequin. Her heart fluttered with satisfaction. Fashion was her art, her lifeblood, and her purpose. In the midst of that quiet morning, she saw movement upon the polished floor. A tiny figure struggled to stand, legs wobbling as if freshly born into the world. She blinked and tilted her head with curiosity. There, scuttling with unsteady limbs, was a creature so small she almost mistook him for a large insect. But as she leaned down, she realized with stunned clarity that it was a tiny human male. He was no taller than her hoof, but was a beautiful, majestic-looking human being. He had chestnut brown hair, his gorgeous-looking eyes were a mixture of blue and gray, and he wore a thin tunic frayed and coated in dust. He was exactly Rarity's type of man. He knelt upon the marble, trembling from exhaustion or fear. She could not tell which emotion he was feeling. His chest rose and fell quickly as his eyes darted about in desperate confusion before finally locking onto Rarity's eyes. Rarity felt something within her chest tighten and melt at once. She loved his fragility and thought he had such unique beauty. Her heart ached with a sudden rush of love, the same aching adoration she felt for the most delicate imported silks. The panties she wore underneath her fashionable attire felt moist from the excitement as her legs tried to hold back quivers. A rush of wetness poured out of her. She blinked, regaining her composure with a gentle flick of her mane as she noticed how flushed she was in her face. Slowly, without speaking, she lowered her horn, lifting his trembling body into the air. His small limbs curled around her horn. Rarity took him to her sewing station. Her hoof cleared space upon her velvet pincushion, and she set him on top of it. The tiny man opened his eyes in shock under the weight of her gaze. Rarity stepped back to admire him fully, her chest fluttering with soft excitement as she started feeling quivers of pleasure in her body again. He was beautiful in a way that transcended species. She blushed as his hands brushed his tousled hair out of his face. Despite all the beautiful clothing pieces in her boutique, Rarity felt like she had seen the rarest gem she had ever found. Every morning, outside, in the town of Ponyville, everyone was joyful and lively as ever. Inside the boutique, however, there was only the quiet, creative life of Rarity. The snip of scissors, the hum of levitation magic, the faint clinking of gemstone beads as they spilled into sorted trays. Each dawn began the same. Rarity would rise before the sun, brushing her mane, clean her horn, then she stepped into her private kitchenette to prepare rose petal tea. After pouring her tea, she would turn to where Dandy slept upon. She had dedicated the velvet pincushion solely to him. Rarity would quietly sip her tea as she admired Dandy as he slept. His tiny body rose and fell with soft, peaceful breaths. She loved watching his loose strands of hair tumbled across his forehead, fluttering faintly each time he exhaled. His breathing was so quiet she sometimes lowered her ear to him just to hear its faint rhythm, sometimes sniffing his gentle breaths as to feel closer to him. Rarity's legs always quivered with that familiar, loving ache that felt so good at the sight of him. Her refined mind compared him to a sleeping fairy prince. Quietly, she floated him into the air with her aura, warming him with her horn's gentle hum until his eyes blinked open. Then, she would set him upon her sewing desk, just beside her sketchbook and gem palette trays. There he would remain each day, as he watched her work with silent awe. Dandy thought Rarity moved with the balletic grace of a lifelong couturière. Dandy would watch as Rarity spun fabrics across mannequins, pinned lace to collars, and embroidered silver lilies along the hems of evening gowns commissioned by Upper Canterlot Society. Though he never spoke in those early days, his presence fit seamlessly into her routine. She began to measure her mornings not by hours, but by the subtle shifts in his attention. By the way his bluish-gray eyes widened when she sketched 3 gown concepts in under 10 minutes, or the tiny smile and slight biting of his lips each time she twirled a finished dress across the room to examine it in the full-length mirror. Dandy found Rarity more and more attractive as the days went by. Her chest would warm with pride each time his silent approval shone across his face. Unlike some of her more boisterous friends, who praised her designs with enthusiastic squeals and cheers, Dandy's quiet admiration felt deeper and purer. It brought her great satisfaction knowing Dandy appreciated her brilliance. Between commissions, Rarity often brewed a second pot of tea, filling the boutique with fresh rose lavender steam that Dandy had grown to love. She would break a biscuit into the smallest crumb and set it upon a satin scrap for him to nibble, his tiny hands cupping the crumb as he ate. Each evening, as Celestia's sun set below the Ponyville hills, Rarity would carefully levitate Dandy into her private chambers. Her bedroom was her sanctuary, and now she had someone to share that sacred place with. There, Dandy and Rarity made the most of their love, sharing the affection for one another in a new position every day. And so their days passed, with scissor snips, blooming silks, and the silent, powerful bond that blossomed between a sophisticated unicorn with an eye for beauty and a tiny human whose existence became her most treasured masterpiece. The dawn that broke over Carousel Boutique on that fateful morning was softer than usual. Inside, the boutique was silent except for the quiet bubbling of rose-petal tea brewing in Rarity's kitchenette. Rarity stood before her full-length mirror in her private dressing room, brushing her mane like usual. She felt it every morning now, that a gentle ache that pulsed between her legs, as she watched Dandy wake upon his velvet pincushion bed. It was a longing beyond fashion, beyond praise or artistic fulfillment. It was the ache of love wrapping itself around her ribs. She turned from her mirror to gaze at him. He was stretching his tiny arms above his head, blinking sleepily. His hair fell over his forehead, as Rarity watched his thin tunic slipped slightly from his shoulder, revealing the smooth paleness of his tiny collarbone. Rarity tried to not make it obvious she was staring with such sensual excitement. His blue-gray eyes, still hazy with sleep, rose to meet hers. Rarity's heart thudded softly within her chest, vibrating her ribs with tender urgency that quivered all over her body. He was so small, so delicate, his entire existence dependent upon her goodwill and care. She felt the protective love within her deepen, mingling with a warmth that made her chest tighten and her undergarments moisten. Rarity found herself watching Dandy with growing intensity. At first, it was simple affection, but with each passing day, a new desire began to bloom within her mind. It was not merely a desire to keep him close. No, it was a deeper fantasy, something that caused quivers to pulse within her like a hidden river pouring out of her. She wanted to protect him from every cruel gaze of outside world, but above all, she wanted him to be hers in a way beyond ownership or affection. She felt this overwhelming desire to consume him in love. With him inside of her, hidden away in her softest, warmest depths, he would be safe from all harm. There, pressed sensually against the plush walls of her body, he would be able to see and feel the pleasure he could cause her body to feel. He would never slip from her grasp or vanish into the careless vastness of Equestria. She could be alone with him and feel his tiny movements and hear heartbeat faster as they both got excited together. She alone would know he was alive, that he loved her, and that he was hers. To swallow him was not an act of hunger. It was an act of devotion and passion. It was the most intimate form of love she could offer him. That was as close as one could intimately get to another living being. Within her, he would become her hidden treasure, her secret fantasy, a living gem she could cherish beyond all dresses and diamonds. And so, Rarity knew her decision was made. Her heart pulsed as she felt passionate quivers rush through her body again. Today, I shall swallow him into me. As Dandy was still sleeping, and without speaking, Rarity's magic encased him, lifting his body into the air. She drew him closer to her lips, feeling her breath catch within her throat. She opened her luscious lips slowly, revealing the glistening pink softness within her mouth. Her warm breath spilled over him in humid waves. She let her tongue slide out slightly, curling below his dangling feet. For a moment, she simply held him there, gazing upon him with adoration. His small chest rising and falling with rapid breaths still. She felt her stomach tighten and her clothing moisten in a delicate shiver of anticipation. Her refined mind was getting too excited. With slow, deliberate grace, she lowered him onto her tongue. She closed her lips around him, sealing him in humid darkness. Her tongue molded around his body shape, savoring the salty warmth of his skin and the faint taste of his morning sweat that Rarity loved to sniff. Her tongue brushed him against her palate, coating him in her silky saliva. Rarity exhaled through her nose, her eyelids drifting half shut with blissful concentration and sensual pleasure. She could feel his tiny heart racing upon her tongue, vibrating against her taste buds. The sensation sent thrills down her neck, along her spine, and directly into her groin. Each muscle shivering with protective, possessive love. Within her mouth, he lay still. She let him remain there for what felt like endless moments, breathing slowly through her nose, savoring the intimacy until she could not take it anymore. Finally, she tilted her head back. Her horn glowed faintly as she swallowed him, with the river that was building inside her finally overwhelming, releasing onto her undergarments. Her throat opened for him, wrapping him in tight, rhythmic muscle walls that rippled downwards as her quivering slowly came to a halt. The motion squeezed around his body, gently compressing him with each subtle contraction, massaging him deeper into her chest. He slid through her throat, as the gurgles of her stomach welcomed him below. To Rarity, each swallow was a sensual caress, drawing him deeper into her embrace. She felt the faint bulge he made in her slender neck descend past her collarbone, into the warm expanse of her chest. Her heart pulsed steadily beside him as he passed her heart. When he slipped fully into her stomach, Rarity released a big sigh with half-opened eyes and slight drool on the edge of her gently parted lips. Her body was reveling in the passing of all the excitement. The gentle bulge settled beneath her chest, hidden by her pristine white fur. She brought her hoof to rest upon it, feeling its subtle curve beneath her touch. Dandy awoken just in time as he landed softly within her stomach. It was a small, snug chamber, slick with a thin layer of warmth that radiated from her body. Gentle undulations massaged him with each of her breaths. The air was humid with her scent. It took a few minutes for Dandy to realize where he was. But as soon as Dandy inhaled a few deep breaths to take in her scent, he knew exactly where he was. Around him, her stomach walls glowed with faint bluish light, a quiet aura of unicorn magic illuminating his safe haven. He lay curled within her, listening to her insides. He could hear the muffled thudding of her heartbeat, the slow whoosh of her breathing, and the occasional gurgle or sigh of her digestive tract adjusting to his comforting presence. He adapted to being inside of her body amazingly fast. Each sound soothed him. He could hear Rarity's thoughts telling him, "You are safe. You are loved. You are mine." Rarity then returned to her sewing desk, her clothing still covered in slight sweat and moisture from the big event. She pinned some white lace along a new bridal gown design, humming softly with joy. Her hoof remained upon her belly. She felt his little movements within her belly and exhaled a breath of quiet satisfaction. The world outside was full of beauty to create and admirers to impress, but only he filled her with such complete, soul-deep contentment. Within her stomach, he was hers and hers alone. Her heart whispered in silent song, "My darling Dandy, my tiny prince, within me, you are safe forever." One rainy evening, Rarity stood before her newest gown, a masterpiece of ivory satin adorned with cascading amethyst beading. Beneath her chest, the fullness of her belly pulsed with love from Dandy. Each small movement sent tremors of excitement and love through her body. She sighed with half-open eyes, as she enjoyed the gentle quivers Dandy gave her with his movements. Then the boutique's bell rang. The chiming slicing through the short-lived fantasy Rarity was in the middle of. Rarity turned to face the entr'acte. Standing in the doorway, with droplets of rain dripping from her turquoise coat, was Sassy Saddles. Her mane lay damp against her shoulders, and her teal eyes gleamed with an uncharacteristic sharpness. "Sassy," Rarity murmured with a polite nod edged with caution. She floated a lace cloth to dab the raindrops from her guest's face, the refined courtesy automatic despite the feeling of unease blooming within her chest. Sassy's eyes drifted downwards. Her gaze sharpened upon the swell of Rarity's belly, which was moving faintly under the satin folds of Rarity's dress, as Dandy was moving within her. Sassy smiled a cruel smile. "Oh, so this is what has made you glow with such secret happiness these days," her eyes seemed to say, though her mouth remained silent. Rarity stiffened as the atmosphere tightened. The rain outside started pouring harder. Rarity's her horn dimmed, and she lifted her chin slightly as she moved to place herself directly between Sassy and the path to her private dressing room. Sassy stepped closer, her eyes looking briefly to Carousel Boutique's shimmering gowns as she weighed the worth of what she planned to steal. Her horn brightened as thunder struck upon the roof, rattling the frames of the window panes. In that instant, Rarity's memories flashed before her. She saw herself deep within the Diamond Dog's dark tunnels, their claws scraping against rock walls as they tried to chain her down. She remembered her tears, the despair she felt, and how she turned their arrogance into panic until they released her, defeated by her wits and inner steel. The Diamond Dogs had underestimated her, and now Sassy seemed to be doing the same. Rarity planted her hooves down firmly on the marble floor. Her horn flared with blinding sapphire light. The mannequin's gowns rippled with a sudden magical gust. Sassy staggered back. Her horn's glow flickered and died as she stumbled against a mannequin, toppling a half-finished cape that fell around her hooves. Rarity stepped towards Sassy. Her chest rose with power as her gaze spoke. "Leave now. He is mine. Mine alone. I will protect him until the day I die." Feeling fear and envy, Sassy turned and fled into the storm. The boutique's bell jangled behind her as the door swung closed. Rarity's horn dimmed as she rested her hoof lightly upon her belly, feeling Dandy's tiny movements within, as if Dandy was an understanding of what had nearly been lost. She smiled down at her rounded belly, her eyes nearly in tears. "No creature shall ever take you from me, mon trésor," her heart whispered. "Within me, you are safe from all storms, even the jealous hearts of others." In that moment inside the boutique, Rarity felt an overwhelming surge of love rise within her. The brush with losing him propelled her to take an action she was contemplating. "Mon trésor," she whispered with devotion, as tears dripped down her cheek. "My darling Dandy, marry me. Be mine forever. Not only in body, but as my husband. My heart is yours and only yours. I promise, within me, you shall always be safe, and within you, my love shall shine brighter than any diamond I could ever cut." And though his voice could not reach her ears, she felt his answer resonate through her stomach. A tiny, silent yes that pulsed against her stomach walls. Finally, spring arrived upon Ponyville in a grand flourish. The rolling hills beyond Twilight Sparkle's castle erupted full of daisies, buttercups, and tiny violet blooms. Today was the wedding day. Birds sang from the tops of apple trees as Rarity and Dandy's hearts pulsed with joy. In the castle courtyard, pastel streamers waved with a gentle breeze while Pinkie Pie hopped from table to table, arranging towers of lavender cupcakes and gem-shaped candies. Fluttershy oversaw her choir of songbirds, coaxing them into gentle melodies. Rainbow Dash soared above, weaving trails of shimmering rose petals into the breeze. Applejack carried crates of sparkling cider and freshly pressed apple juice. Every pony who mattered gathered there in the quiet spring morning. Twilight Sparkle standing regally upon the stage beside Princess Celestia, Pinkie Pie bouncing at the front row with confetti cannons strapped to her sides, Rainbow Dash perched upon a cloud overhead, Fluttershy beaming shyly between bouquets, and Applejack adjusting her hat with quiet tears in her bright green eyes. And then came Rarity. She stepped through the courtyard gates with a grace that left the entire gathering breathless. Her wedding gown was the purest ivory satin, embroidered with silver lilies and diamond dust thread that glimmered. Layers of gossamer tulle moved behind her as she walked. Tiny amethyst gems dotted the train. Her mane was styled into a twisted bun crowned with lilac blossoms and diamond pins. Around her neck was a lace choker stitched with pearls. Beneath the fitted satin of her gown, her stomach curved with quiet fullness. Each subtle movement within her sent pulses of warmth through her body as Dandy lay nestled within her, listening to the muffled swell of wedding music. As Rarity walked down the aisle, rose petals drifted onto her gown, clinging to her veil and train. Her eyes met Celestia's calm, wise gaze, then Twilight's sparkling, tear-bright eyes. The princesses smiled with love and pride, though neither fully understood what Rarity carried within her. She turned to stand before the gathered guests. Dandy pressed against her stomach's walls to let her know he was ready. Her stomach walls rippled and her throat opened to welcome him. Slowly, she tilted her head back. The guests watched in silent wonder as her horn shined brighter, illuminating her parted mouth with glowing blue radiance. From within her, Dandy rose up with his perfect chestnut hair tousled and damp, his bluish-gray eyes blinking against the sudden daylight after so long in her darkness. She cradled him in her magic, lifting his small, trembling body from her throat to her lips. For a heartbeat, their eyes met. She lowered him gently onto the top of her head as he crawled atop her wedding bun. He stood there with his tiny hands gripping her mane for balance. The crowd erupted in cheers and soft tears as Celestia raised her horn, with a golden glow of magic swirling around them both. Rainbow Dash swooped overhead in an arc of color, Pinkie Pie's confetti cannons exploded in shimmering bursts, and Fluttershy's choir of songbirds burst into joyful harmony. Twilight Sparkle spoke the sacred words. By the bonds of love unbreakable, by the harmony of devotion and trust, and by the light that dwells within each of your hearts, I declare you one, forever joined, in ways that transcend form or magic. Let your union bring beauty into this world, as you have brought beauty into each other's lives. Dandy knelt down until his tiny lips pressed the top of her ear in a kiss. The crowd of ponies were so moved by Twilight Sparkle's words, everyone was silent. Rarity closed her eyes and felt his warmth upon her head. She remembered every morning spent brushing his tiny hair with her magic. Every night she tucked him onto his velvet pincushion bed. The way his bluish-gray eyes shimmered. The first trembling moment he rested upon her tongue, tasting her breath and surrendering into her plush warmth. His silent acceptance as her throat swallowed him down into the deepest, most intimate part of her stomach. And so, as the wedding came to a close, Rarity carried Dandy home within her once more. This time as her loving husband.